The community center smells like vanilla air freshener and old wood polish, the same scent that clings to every gathering place where people my age come to pretend we're still young. I smooth my navy dress, the one my daughter insisted made my eyes look vibrant, and check my reflection in the bathroom mirror one more time. At 72, I've learned that lighting can be either merciful or brutal, and tonight I need all the mercy I can get. My hands tremble as I apply another coat of lipstick. Rose Sunset, the tube says, though it feels more like rose desperation. I haven't seen Thomas Mitchell since 1974, when he disappeared from my life like smoke from a blown-out candle. 50 years, half a century of wondering, of what-ifs that kept me awake on restless nights, even after I married Harold, even after I raised 3 children and buried my husband and learned to live alone. The music drifts through the bathroom door, big band melodies that transport me back to when my knees didn't ache and my heart still believed in fairy tales. I take a deep breath and push open the door. The main hall has been transformed with crepe paper streamers and dim lighting that flatters our wrinkled faces and silver hair. Couples sway on the makeshift dance floor, moving with the careful grace of people who've learned to protect fragile bones and tender hearts. I scan the room methodically, the way I used to search for my children in crowded playgrounds. There, by the punch bowl, talking to Meredith from the bridge club. Even at 74, Thomas carries himself with that same easy confidence that made me fall in love with him when I was 22 and he was 24. His hair is completely white now, and he's thicker around the middle, but his laugh still creates those crinkles around his eyes that once made me forget my own name. My heart hammers against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was a mistake, a foolish old woman's fantasy. When Meredith mentioned at Bridge Club last week that Thomas had moved back to town after his wife's death, when she casually suggested he might be at tonight's retirement community dance, I should have stayed home with my crossword puzzles and chamomile tea. But here I am, wearing my best dress and the perfume Harold used to love, hoping that 50 years haven't erased what Thomas and I once shared, hoping that somewhere in his aged face he'll see the girl who used to dance with him to the radio in his tiny apartment above the drugstore, who whispered promises we were too young to keep. I force my feet to move across the polished floor, navigating between walkers and canes with the determination that has carried me through 7 decades of small disappointments and unexpected joys. As I approach, Thomas looks up from his conversation with Meredith. His eyes, still that impossible blue, sweep over me with polite interest, the kind of bland acknowledgement reserved for pleasant strangers. Nothing, not a flicker of recognition, not even a pause. "Thomas," I say, my voice steadier than I feel. "It's me, Margaret Sullivan. Well, Margaret Chen now. I was Margaret Sullivan when we—" I trail off, watching his expression for any sign that my name unlocks a door to our shared past. He smiles with practiced courtesy, the same smile he probably gives to grocery clerks and bank tellers. "I'm sorry, I don't. Are you a friend of Meredith's?" The words hit me like a physical blow. 50 years of memories, dancing until dawn, sharing dreams over coffee and cigarettes, the way he used to trace my face with his fingertips and promised we'd find each other again someday. Reduced to polite confusion from a stranger who happens to share the face of my first love. "Oh," I manage, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "I thought we knew each other a long time ago, in the 70s. The understatement of the century. We knew each other the way teenagers know summer storms, completely, desperately, with the certainty that nothing else in the world matters." "Oh," I manage, fighting to keep my expression neutral. I thought we knew each other a long time ago, in the 70s. The understatement of the century. We knew each other the way teenagers know summer storms, completely, desperately, with the certainty that nothing else in the world matters. The 70s were a long time ago, he says with a chuckle, and I notice his hearing aid, the slight tremor in his left hand. Time has changed us both, but apparently it's been kinder to my memory than to his. I'm afraid I don't recall. Were you in Syracuse then? Syracuse? He doesn't even remember that we met in Albany that summer when I was working at my aunt's flower shop and he was selling insurance door to door. That we spent 3 perfect months believing we were each other's destiny before his company transferred him to California and long-distance love proved more fragile than we'd imagined. Yes, I lie, because the truth is too complicated and apparently too forgettable. Syracuse. I should walk away now, preserve what's left of my dignity, return to my quiet life where Thomas Mitchell exists only in faded photographs and the songs that still make me cry. Instead, I hear myself saying, "Would you like to dance?" He glances at Meredith, who gives him an encouraging nod. "I'd be delighted," he says, offering his arm with the gallantry of a man who learned manners in an era when such things mattered. His hand is warm and slightly rough as he leads me to the dance floor, and for a moment I'm 22 again, dizzy with the nearness of him. The band strikes up a slow ballad, something generic and safe that won't strain our aging hearts or challenge our careful steps. Thomas holds me at the proper distance, his hand light on my waist, his other hand clasping mine with the gentle pressure of someone who's learned that bodies are more fragile than they appear. We move together with surprising ease, as if muscle memory transcends the failures of conscious recollection. His aftershave is different, something modern and subtle instead of the Old Spice he used to wear. But underneath it, I catch a hint of the soap scent that used to cling to his shirts when I'd borrow them in the morning, walking around his apartment in cotton that smelt like him. "You're a lovely dance," he says, and I can tell he means it. There's warmth in his voice, the appreciation of a man who's learned to notice small graces. "Thank you." I want to tell him that he taught me to dance that summer evening on his fire escape when the music from the apartment below drifted up through the open windows. I want to remind him how we practiced the waltz for his cousin's wedding, how we laughed when I stepped on his feet, how he said I was perfect anyway. Instead, I say, "You too." The song ends too soon, and another begins, something with a faster tempo that makes my chest tight with memory. It's not the same song, of course. It couldn't be, but the rhythm is close enough to resurrect ghosts. And suddenly I'm transported to that last night together, dancing in his empty apartment while the moving boxes sat packed against the wall, both of us pretending we weren't breaking each other's hearts. Thomas notices my hesitation. "Perhaps we should sit this one out," he suggests kindly, probably assuming I'm winded or worried about my knees. "No," I say quickly, "I'm fine. It's just, this song reminds me of something." We continue dancing, but now I'm lost in the past, remembering how Thomas used to hum along when we danced, his voice rough and off-key, but somehow perfect. How he'd pull me closer during the slow parts, his breath warm against my ear, his hand tracing circles on my back that made me feel like I was melting from the inside out. Without thinking, I begin to hum, not the current song, but our song, the one he used to whistle while he shaved in the morning, the one that played on his radio the first time we made love, the one I haven't been able to hear for 50 years without feeling like I'm drowning in bittersweet memory. The melody rises from somewhere deep in my chest, soft at first, then stronger. It's a simple tune, something popular in the mid-70s that probably wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. But to us, it was everything. Our anthem, our promise, our goodbye. Thomas stops moving, his hand tightens on mine, and I feel his entire body go still. I keep humming, watching his face, seeing the exact moment when recognition dawns like sunrise over familiar landscape. Maggie? His voice cracks on my nickname, the one only he ever used. My God, Maggie, is it really you? The world tilts sideways, and suddenly I'm not a 72-year-old widow at a retirement dance anymore. I'm 22 and reckless and so desperately in love that I can barely breathe. Thomas' eyes fill with tears, real tears, not the polite moisture that comes with age and medication, and his hand moves to cup my cheek with the same tenderness he used to show when I'd cry over sappy movies. "I can't believe it," he whispers, and his voice is the same underneath the decades. The same voice that used to call me at midnight just to hear me laugh, that whispered promises in the dark that we both believed would last forever. Maggie, my beautiful Maggie. I want to laugh and cry and collapse all at once. "You didn't recognize me," I say, and it comes out more accusatory than I intended. 50 years of wondering, of assuming I'd been forgotten, bubble up in my voice. "Your hair," he says, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "It was so dark then, and we were so young. But that song, God, I'd know that song anywhere. I haven't heard it in 40 years, but I used to hum it every morning, drive my wife crazy with it." His wife. The word sits between us like a chaperone, a reminder of all the lives we've lived without each other. I pull back slightly, suddenly aware that we're making a scene on the dance floor. Other couples are staring, probably thinking we're having some kind of medical episode. "Maybe we should," I gesture toward the tables at the edge of the room. Thomas nods, taking my hand again as if he's afraid I'll disappear. We make our way to an empty table in the corner, past the curious glances and whispered conversations. My legs feel unsteady, not from age, but from shock. After all these years of wondering what I'd say if I ever saw him again, I'm suddenly speechless. He pulls out my chair, always the gentleman, and settles across from me. Up close, the changes are more apparent. Lines bracket his mouth, and his once thick hair is sparse on top. There's a small scar on his chin that wasn't there before, and his hands show the spots and wrinkles that mark a man in his 70s. But his eyes are the same impossible blue, and when he smiles, I see the boy who used to bring me wildflowers stolen from neighbors' gardens. "I can't believe you remembered our song," I say, because it seems safer than acknowledging the way my heart is racing. "I've never forgotten it." His voice is soft, intimate, despite the crowd around us. "I tried. God knows I tried. After I moved to California, after I met Sandra, after we had kids, I told myself it was just a summer romance, that we were too young to know what love really was." Sandra. His wife's name was Sandra, and somehow that makes her real in a way that changes everything. She wasn't just an abstract concept, a placeholder wife who existed in the space between Thomas and me. She was Sandra, who probably hated the song he hummed every morning, who built a life with the man I thought belonged to me. "But you did forget," I say, needing to understand. "You looked right through me when I said my name." Thomas runs his hand through his thinning hair, a gesture so familiar it makes my chest ache. "You have to understand, I couldn't let myself remember. It would have been too dangerous. I was married. I had responsibilities. Remembering you, really remembering what we had, it would have destroyed everything I'd built." The honesty cuts through me like a blade. He's right, of course. Memory can be a weapon against the life you've chosen to live. I think of all the times over the years when I'd catch myself humming our song while making dinner for Harold. The guilt that would wash over me when I'd realize I was thinking of another man's hands, another man's laugh. So you trained yourself to forget me, I say. It's not a question. I tried, but Maggie, he reaches across the table and covers my hand with his. His skin is papery now, crossed with veins and marked with age spots, but his touch still sends electricity through my nerve endings. I never stopped loving you. Not really. I just buried it so deep I thought it was gone. The words hang between us like a bridge I'm afraid to cross. Around us, the dance continues, couples moving to music that suddenly seems too loud, too cheerful for this moment of reckoning with the past. I looked for you, I admit, because what's the point of protecting my dignity now? In the beginning, I called information, tried to track you down through your company, but you'd disappeared completely. I changed companies after the first year in California. New job, new life, new everything. He pauses, studying my face as if he's memorizing it all over again. I convinced myself it was better that way. Clean breaks heal faster, or so I told myself. Did it work? The clean break? Thomas is quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. I thought it did. I loved Sandra. I really did. We had 38 good years together, raised 2 kids, traveled, built a life. But there was always this shadow, this part of me that belonged to a girl named Maggie who danced with me in a tiny apartment above a drugstore. My throat tightens. I married Harold 3 years after you left. He was a good man, patient with my moods, kind to me even when I was distant. But I think part of me was always waiting for you. I wanted to, Thomas says, his voice barely audible over the music. God, Maggie, you have no idea how many times I almost called, almost got in the car and drove east. The night before my wedding, I sat in my hotel room with the phone book open to the S's, looking for Sullivan, Margaret. The revelation hits me like a physical blow. You almost called? I got as far as dialing your number. Your aunt answered. Do you remember your Aunt Ruth? She said you were out, asked if I wanted to leave a message. His eyes meet mine, full of regret and something that might be hope. I hung up, told myself I was being noble, letting you move on with your life. Aunt Ruth. I remember that night. It was 2 weeks before Harold proposed. I'd been at a friend's bridal shower, coming home late with rice in my hair and the taste of cheap champagne on my tongue. If I'd been home when the phone rang, if I'd heard Thomas's voice, everything would have been different. What would you have said? I ask. If I'd answered? Thomas turns my hand over in his, tracing the lines on my palm with a finger that shakes slightly. That I'd made a mistake, that I loved you, that I wanted to come home to you, whatever it took. The words I've waited 50 years to hear, spoken 50 years too late. I close my eyes and let them wash over me, feeling the weight of all the might-have-beens pressing down on my chest. We can't go back, I whisper, opening my eyes to find him watching me with an expression that breaks my heart all over again. No, he agrees, we can't. But Maggie, what if we could go forward? The question hangs in the air between us like a soap bubble, beautiful, fragile, likely to burst if we breathe too hard. Around us, the retirement dance continues, with its carefully orchestrated cheer, couples shuffling to big band music, while their children and grandchildren exist in a world of smartphones and streaming services. We're relics, Thomas and I, 2 people whose love story began when Nixon was president and gas cost 55 cents a gallon. Forward, I repeat, testing the word. It feels strange in my mouth, like a foreign language I'm trying to pronounce correctly. At 72, I've grown comfortable with the concept of looking backward, reminiscing about my children's childhood, remembering Harold's laugh, sorting through decades of accumulated memories like photographs in a shoebox. Forward implies possibility, risk, the chance of new heartbreak when I thought I'd used up my lifetime quota. Thomas's thumb continues its gentle rhythm across my knuckles, and I notice that his wedding ring is gone. The pale band of skin where it used to rest has faded, but it's still visible if you know to look for it. Like me, he's learned to navigate the world as half of what he used to be, to sleep alone in a bed that feels too wide, to cook for one and eat dinner while watching the evening news. Sandra died 18 months ago, he says, reading my thoughts or perhaps just following the direction of my gaze. Pancreatic cancer. It was quick, which I suppose was a mercy. She didn't suffer long. I'm sorry. The words feel inadequate, the kind of automatic response we offer when confronted with someone else's grief, but I mean them. Sandra was the woman who got to wake up next to him for 38 years, who knew how he liked his coffee and whether he snored. She earned my compassion simply by being the one who was there when I wasn't. Harold passed 3 years ago, I offer in return. Heart attack. One minute he was reading the paper, the next. I shrug, because there's no elegant way to describe how quickly a life can end, how one moment you're married, and the next you're a widow learning to open pickle jars by yourself. I'm sorry too. Thomas's voice carries genuine sympathy, and I realize that he's mourning not just Sandra, but the years we lost, the people we became in each other's absence. Were you happy with Harold? It's a dangerous question, loaded with implications and the potential for wounds we're both too old to heal from. But looking into Thomas's eyes, still that impossible blue despite everything time has taken from him, I find myself wanting to be honest in a way I haven't been with anyone, including myself. I was content, I say slowly. Harold was a good man. He loved me, provided for our family, never gave me reason to complain. We raised 3 children who grew into decent adults, maintained a marriage that looked successful from the outside. I pause, struggling to find words for feelings I've kept locked away for decades. But there was always this part of me that felt absent, like I was playing the role of Harold's wife and Margaret's mother, but the real me, the girl who danced on fire escapes and believed in fairy tales, she was somewhere else. With me, Thomas says quietly. With you. The admission feels like stepping off a cliff, but also like finally telling the truth after decades of careful omissions. I tried so hard to be fair to Harold, to give him all of me. But you can't give what you don't have, and part of my heart never came home from that summer in 1974. The music shifts to something slower, more romantic, and I watch younger couples, though at 70, nearly everyone here qualifies as younger, pull each other closer. Their movements are careful but tender, bodies that have learned to accommodate arthritis and hip replacements and the general fragility that comes with outliving most of your contemporaries. I used to wonder, Thomas continues, what you looked like as you got older, whether you still hummed when you were happy, whether you still cried at movies. Sandra used to tease me about my tendency to daydream, but she never knew what I was dreaming about. What did you imagine? I ask, curious despite myself. A smile plays at the corners of his mouth, and for a moment I see the young man who used to make me laugh until my stomach hurt. I imagined you with gray hair instead of that beautiful dark brown, maybe a little rounder, laugh lines around your eyes. Still graceful, still elegant, but seasoned, like a fine wine that's had time to develop complexity. The description is so close to reality that it takes my breath away. And now that you see me, you're even more beautiful than I imagined. His voice is husky with emotion. There's a strength in your face that wasn't there when you were 22, a depth that comes from living fully, from surviving loss and disappointment, and finding ways to keep going. I feel heat rise in my cheeks, actually blushing at my age like a schoolgirl with her first crush. Thomas. I know it's crazy, he says, leaning forward across the small table until we're close enough that I can smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes. We're not kids anymore. We have children, grandchildren, medical appointments, and early bird dinner specials. But Maggie, when I heard you humming our song, when I realized it was you, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. What? I whisper, though I think I know the answer. Hope. The word falls between us like a gift. For the first time since Sandra died, I felt like maybe there was still something good waiting for me in this world. My eyes fill with tears, and I don't try to stop them. At our age, there's no point in pretending we're not moved by life's unexpected graces. I felt it too, I admit. When you said my name, when you really saw me, it was like waking up from a long dream. Thomas reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a handkerchief, actual cloth, not the paper tissues most men carry now. He leans across the table and gently dabs at my cheeks, the gesture so tender and familiar that it nearly undoes me completely. "What do you think?" he asks. "Are we too old to be foolish?" I consider the question seriously because it deserves a serious answer. We are old. We have grown children who would probably think we've lost our minds. We have health issues and fixed incomes and no guarantee of how much time we have left. Starting over at 70-something is nobody's idea of practical. But practicality has never been my strong suit where Thomas Mitchell is concerned. Maybe, I say, covering his hand with both of mine, but maybe foolish is exactly what we need to be. The band announces their final song of the evening, and couples begin making their way to the dance floor for one last dance. Thomas stands and offers me his hand, and this time when I take it, it feels like coming home after a 50-year journey I never meant to take. "One more dance?" he asks, and I nod, not trusting my voice. As we move onto the floor, I'm acutely aware of how we must look. Two silver-haired seniors who've rediscovered each other at a community center dance, moving with the careful steps of people whose bodies are more fragile than their hearts. Other dancers smile at us with the indulgent warmth reserved for elderly romance, the assumption that anything we feel must be sweet and harmless, a pale shadow of real passion. They don't understand that the heart doesn't age the way the body does, that at 72, I can feel desire as sharp and desperate as anything I experienced at 22. That Thomas' hand on my waist, his breath near my ear, his body close to mine can still make me forget that I'm a grandmother who takes calcium supplements and goes to bed at 9 o'clock. This song is perfect, a classic ballad from our era, something Frank Sinatra might have crooned about love that endures despite time and distance. Thomas pulls me closer than propriety suggests, and I let him because propriety is for people who have time to waste on appearances. "I have a confession," he murmurs against my hair, and I feel his words as much as hear them. "What's that?" "I lied earlier about training myself to forget you." His hand moves to the small of my back, pressing me closer. "I never forgot you, Maggie, not for one day in 50 years. I just learned to live with remembering." The admission breaks something open in my chest, a dam I've been shoring up for decades. "I know," I whisper back. "I never forgot you either." We dance in silence for a while, letting the music wash over us while I try to absorb the magnitude of what's happening. This morning, I was a widow with 3 grown children and a quiet life built around bridge club and gardening. Tonight, I'm a woman in love, feeling things I thought I'd left behind with my youth. "What happens now?" I ask as the song begins to wind down. It's the practical question, the one that acknowledges we can't live in this moment forever, that the dance will end and we'll have to decide what comes next. Thomas doesn't answer immediately, and I can feel him thinking, weighing possibilities against realities. When he speaks, his voice is careful, as if he's afraid of saying too much or too little. I don't know, he admits. I moved back here 6 months ago to be closer to my daughter and her family. I have a small apartment downtown, nothing fancy, but comfortable enough for one person. He pauses, and I can feel his heartbeat through his suit jacket. What about you? A house in Maple Heights. Too big for just me, but it's where I raised my children. I can't seem to make myself sell it. I think about the empty bedrooms, the dining room table that seats 8 but usually serves 1, the garden Harold and I planted together that I still tend out of habit rather than joy. My youngest keeps telling me I should downsize, move into one of those senior communities. And what do you tell her? That I'm not ready. But as I say it, I realize that maybe I've been waiting for something without knowing what it was. Maybe I've been keeping a house that's too big because somewhere in my heart I believed that someday I might not be living alone in it. The song ends and the band begins packing up their instruments. Around us, couples separate with the reluctance of people who know that Monday morning waits on the other side of Sunday night's magic. Thomas and I step apart too, but he keeps hold of my hand, as if he's afraid I'll disappear if he lets go. Would you, he clears his throat and starts again, would you like to get coffee? There's a place downtown that stays open late. We could talk more, catch up properly. Coffee, such a simple word, but loaded with possibility. Coffee means extending this evening, means choosing to see where this reconnection might lead. It means admitting that I'm not ready for this to end, that I want to know everything that's happened to him in the 50 years we've been apart. I'd like that, I say, and his smile is worth every risk this might entail. As we gather our coats and make our way toward the exit, I catch sight of us in the mirror beside the door, 2 seniors heading out into the night like teenagers on a first date. My hair is still perfectly styled, my lipstick only slightly faded. Thomas has put on a gray wool coat that makes him look distinguished, and when he offers me his arm, I take it with something that feels remarkably like joy. The October air is crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. Thomas's car is an older model sedan, well-maintained but not flashy, the kind of practical vehicle that says its owner has learned to value reliability over style. He opens my door with old-fashioned courtesy, and as I settle into the passenger seat, I'm struck by how natural this feels, as if 50 years have collapsed into a single heartbeat. The coffee shop is small and warm, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. At 10:30 on a Saturday night, we're among the youngest customers, which says something about either the demographic of late-night coffee drinkers or our own willingness to stay up past our usual bedtimes. Thomas orders black coffee, no sugar, and I remember that's how he used to drink it when we were young. I ask for decaf with cream, a concession to age, and the hope that I might actually sleep tonight despite the adrenaline still coursing through my system. We choose a table in the corner, away from the handful of college students typing on laptops and the elderly man working a crossword puzzle. Thomas helps me out of my coat, and I notice that his hands shake slightly, not from nerves this time, but from the minor tremor that comes with age and medication. It's a reminder that we're not the young lovers who once believed they had forever stretching ahead of them. So, he says, once we're settled with our coffee, tell me about your children. It's a safe place to start, this exchange of the life details that fill the space between who we were and who we've become. I tell him about Michael, my oldest, who followed Harold into accounting and now lives in Portland with his wife and teenage daughter. About Sarah, my middle child, who became a teacher like she always said she would and never married, though she's been with the same partner for 15 years. About Jennifer, my baby, who's now 43 and insists I'm too young to be living alone in a house meant for a family. Thomas tells me about his son David, who works in software engineering in San Francisco, and his daughter Lisa, who moved back east after her divorce and is raising 2 boys as a single mother. We compare grandchildren like trading cards, sharing pride and worry in equal measure. His grandson is struggling in school, showing signs of the dyslexia that runs in Thomas's family. My granddaughter just got her driver's license and thinks she's invincible. It's the kind of conversation that happens between any two people our age, the comfortable cataloging of family achievements and concerns that forms the backbone of social interaction at senior center gatherings and church potlucks. But underneath the ordinary exchange, I'm listening for clues to the man Thomas became in my absence, looking for traces of the boy I fell in love with. Sandra was a good mother, he says when I ask about how they managed to raise children while he was building his insurance career. Patient in ways I never learned to be. She had this ability to see what each kid needed. David needed structure and clear expectations. Lisa needed more freedom to find her own way. There's genuine affection in his voice when he talks about his late wife, and I'm surprised to discover that it doesn't hurt the way I thought it would. If anything, I'm glad he had someone who loved him well, who gave him children and stability and 38 years of partnership. The alternative, imagining him lonely and unfulfilled all these years, would have been harder to bear. Harold was the steady one in our house, I offer in return. I was always the one who worried too much, who wanted to fix everything for them. He taught me to step back, let them make their own mistakes. Do you miss him? Thomas asks, and I can tell the question cost him something. I consider my answer carefully because honesty has become important between us in a way it wasn't when we were 22 and thought we knew everything about love. I miss the companionship, I say finally, the shared history, the way he could make me laugh when I was taking myself too seriously. I miss having someone who knew me well enough to predict what I'd order at a restaurant or how I'd react to the evening news. Thomas nods, understanding. But I don't miss the passion we never really had. Harold loved me deeply, and I cared for him in return, but it was comfortable, safe. What we had was a good marriage by most standards, but it wasn't. I search for the right words, aware that I'm about to say something I've never admitted to anyone, including myself. It wasn't what I felt with you that summer. The confession sits between us like a live wire, dangerous and electric. Thomas reaches across the table and covers my hand with his, the gesture now familiar after our evening of rediscovery. I loved Sandra, he says quietly, but you're right, it was different. What we had that summer, that was lightning in a bottle, rare and intense, and probably unsustainable at the time. And now, I ask, because at our age, there's no point in dancing around the important questions. Thomas is quiet for a long moment, studying my face as if he's trying to memorize it all over again. When he speaks, his voice is soft but certain. Now we're old enough to handle lightning. The words send a shiver through me that has nothing to do with the temperature in the coffee shop. Around us, the late-night crowd begins to thin as people head home to their real lives. But I'm not ready for this evening to end. I'm not ready to go back to my empty house and pretend this was just a pleasant encounter with an old friend. Thomas, I begin, then stop, not sure how to voice what I'm feeling. What is it? I'm scared, I admit. I'm 72 years old, and I'm sitting here feeling like a teenager again, wanting things I thought I was too old to want, hoping for things that probably don't make sense at our age. His thumb traces circles on the back of my hand, the same gesture he used to make when I was upset about something, a failing grade, a fight with my roommate, the uncertainty of what would happen when summer ended. What are you hoping for? He asks gently. The question opens something in my chest that I've kept locked away for decades. More time, I whisper. More conversations, more dances, more moments like this when it feels like the last 50 years just disappeared. I want to know what kind of man you became, what makes you laugh now, whether you still read mystery novels and hate Brussels sprouts. I still read mysteries, he says with a smile. And Brussels sprouts are still the devil's vegetable. What else do you want to know? Everything. The word comes out more intense than I intended, but I don't take it back. I want to know everything I missed. And I pause, gathering courage I didn't know I still possessed. I want to find out what happens when two people get a second chance they never expected to have. Thomas lifts my hand to his lips and kisses my knuckles with a tenderness that makes my breath catch. Then let's find out, he says. We may be old, Maggie, but we're not dead. And maybe, just maybe, the best parts of our story are still waiting to be written. Outside the coffee shop window, snow has begun to fall, the first of the season, delicate flakes catching the streetlight like confetti thrown by an invisible celebration. I watch them drift past the glass and think about beginnings, about the way snow covers everything familiar and makes the world look new again. Walk me to my car, I ask, though what I really mean is, please don't let this end yet. Please give me a few more minutes before I have to drive home alone and wonder if this was all an impossible dream. Thomas stands and helps me into my coat, his hands lingering on my shoulders for just a moment longer than necessary. The gesture is intimate without being presumptuous, a promise of care that I haven't felt in longer than I care to admit. The snow is coming down harder now, coating the sidewalk with a thin layer that crunches softly under our feet. My car seems impossibly far away, parked at the end of the block where I'd found a spot under a streetlight. Thomas offers me his arm, and we walk slowly, carefully, two people who've learned that falling can have consequences more serious than bruised pride. I was thinking, he says as we reach my car, there's a matinee at the Paramount tomorrow, an old Cary Grant film, an affair to remember. Would you like to go with me? The invitation hangs in the air between us, heavy with significance. A movie date. At our age, with our histories, it should feel ridiculous. Instead, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. I'd love, I say, and I'm rewarded with a smile that makes him look 20 years younger. He waits while I fumble with my keys, the snow beginning to accumulate on his shoulders and in his hair. When I finally get the door open, he steps closer, close enough that I can see the snowflakes caught in his eyelashes. Maggie, he says, and my name in his voice sounds like a prayer. Thank you for tonight, for the song, for finding me again. Thank you for remembering, I whisper back. And then, because life is short and we've already wasted 50 years, I rise up on my toes and kiss him. It's soft and careful and achingly sweet, a kiss between two people who understand that tenderness is more precious than passion, that gentleness is its own form of courage. His lips are warm despite the cold, and when he pulls back, his eyes are bright with unshed tears. I'll pick you up at 1:30, he says, and I nod, not trusting my voice. I drive home through the snow with my heart racing like a teenage girl's, the radio playing love songs that seem written specifically for this moment. When I reach my house, too big, too quiet, too full of memories that belong to a different version of my life, I don't feel lonely for the first time in 3 years. Instead, I feel like I'm on the verge of something wonderful. Sunday morning arrives with the kind of brilliant sunshine that makes fresh snow look like diamonds scattered across the landscape. I wake earlier than usual, my body humming with an energy I haven't felt in years. The face in my bathroom mirror looks the same as always, 72 years of living, written in lines and spots and silver hair, but my eyes are brighter, more alive. I spend longer than usual choosing what to wear, finally settling on a burgundy sweater that Jennifer bought me for Christmas, and gray slacks that Harold always said made me look elegant. It's ridiculous, this attention to appearance for a movie date with a man who's already seen me at my most vulnerable, but I can't help myself. After decades of dressing for comfort and practicality, I want to feel beautiful again. The morning passes slowly, despite my efforts to keep busy. I clean the kitchen that's already spotless, water plants that don't need watering, and finally give up pretending I'm not watching the clock. At 1 o'clock, I station myself by the front window like a teenager waiting for prom date, feeling foolish and giddy in equal measure. Thomas arrives exactly on time, looking distinguished in a navy coat and gray scarf. He's carrying a single red rose, just one, nothing ostentatious, but the gesture makes my heart skip nonetheless. When I open the door, he smiles and hands me the flower with a little bow that's both gallant and slightly ridiculous. "For the most beautiful woman at the dance last night," he says, and I actually giggle, like I'm 22 again. "You're a shameless flatterer, Thomas Mitchell," I tell him, but I'm smiling as I say it. "Only when it's true," he replies, offering me his arm. The Paramount Theater is a beautiful old venue that's been restored to its 1920s glory, all red velvet and gold trim, and the kind of elaborate architecture that makes modern buildings look sadly utilitarian. Thomas buys our tickets, insisting on paying, despite my protests, and we settle into plush seats in the middle section. The theater is about half full, mostly people our age, who remember when Cary Grant was a heartthrob rather than a classic film star. As the lights dim and the opening credits begin, Thomas reaches over and takes my hand. The simple gesture feels monumental, a declaration that this is real, that we're choosing to move forward together into whatever comes next. An Affair to Remember is exactly the kind of romantic melodrama that would have made me cry even when I was happily married to Harold. Tonight, watching it with Thomas's thumb tracing circles on my palm, I find myself sobbing during the final reunion scene, tears streaming down my cheeks without any attempt at dignity. Thomas hands me his handkerchief, the same one from last night, clean and pressed, and doesn't comment on my emotional state. He understands, I think, that I'm not just crying for the characters on screen, but for all the years we lost, all the reunions that never happened, all the love stories that ended too soon. When the credits roll and the lights come up, I dab at my eyes and try to compose myself. "Sorry," I murmur, "I always cry at movies." "I remember," Thomas says gently. "You cried at Love Story that summer. I had to buy you popcorn to cheer you up afterward." The memory surfaces like a photograph developing in slow motion. The two of us in a dingy theater downtown, sharing a bag of over-buttered popcorn while I sniffled into his shoulder. It seems impossible that he remembers such a small detail after all these years. "You bought me Junior Mints, too," I say, surprising myself with the clarity of the recollection. "Your favorite." He helps me to my feet as the theater begins to empty. Are they still? Still. I slip my coat on, suddenly aware that the afternoon is ending, that we'll soon have to decide what comes next. The movie was wonderful, but it was also safe. 2 hours in a dark theater where we didn't have to talk about the future or make any decisions about what this reconnection means. "Would you like to get some dinner?" Thomas asks as we make our way up the aisle. "There's a nice Italian place a few blocks from here. Nothing fancy, just good food and quiet conversation." Dinner. Another step forward, another choice to extend our time together. I think about my empty house, the leftover soup waiting in my refrigerator, the evening of television and crossword puzzles that constitutes my usual Sunday routine. "I'd love dinner," I say, and the relief in his expression tells me that he was genuinely worried I might say no. The restaurant is exactly as he described, small, warm, with checked tablecloths and the kind of comfortable atmosphere that invites lingering conversation. We're seated at a corner table where the lighting is forgiving and the noise level low enough for people our age to hear each other without strain. Over chicken parmesan and a glass of wine that goes straight to my head, we begin to fill in the gaps that coffee conversation couldn't cover. Thomas tells me about the heart attack he had 5 years ago, the way it forced him to slow down and reevaluate what mattered. I share my own health scares, the breast cancer scare that turned out to be benign, the arthritis that makes some mornings more challenging than others. We talk about travel, the places we've seen, and the ones we've always wanted to visit. Thomas spent 2 weeks in Italy after Sandra died, trying to outrun his grief. I confess that I've never been anywhere more exotic than Florida, that Harold preferred familiar vacation spots, and I never pushed for adventure. I always wanted to see Paris, I admit, over tiramisu that we're sharing despite being too full for dessert. All those movies with lovers walking along the Seine, kissing under the Eiffel Tower. It seemed impossibly romantic. "We could go," Thomas says quietly, and the words hang between us like a dare. "To Paris?" I laugh, but there's no humor in it. "Thomas, we're in our 70s. I've never even had a passport." "So we'll get you one." His voice is serious, intense in a way that makes my heart race. "Maggie, I'm 74 years old. I have maybe 10 good years left, maybe 15 if I'm lucky. I don't want to spend them playing it safe." The declaration takes my breath away. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." He reaches across the table and covers my hand with both of his. "I've been thinking about this all day, about what you said last night. About wanting to know everything you missed, about second chances and making the most of whatever time we have left." I stare at him, this man who was a boy when I loved him first, trying to process what he's suggesting. "Thomas, we barely know each other anymore. 50 years is a long time. We're different people now." "Are we?" His blue eyes search mine with an intensity that makes me feel transparent. "Because when I'm with you, I feel exactly like the man I was that summer, the one who believed in love and possibility and taking risks for the right person." My throat tightens with emotion. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you, Maggie. I never stopped loving you, and I hope you feel the same way." He pauses, and I can see him gathering courage for whatever comes next. "I'm saying that maybe we don't have time to take things slow. Maybe at our age, when we find something real, something worth having, we should grab it with both hands." The words I've dreamed of hearing for 50 years, spoken in a small Italian restaurant while snow falls outside and my heart threatens to beat right out of my chest. I want to say yes, want to throw caution to the wind and follow him to Paris or anywhere else he wants to go. But I'm also terrified, afraid of making a mistake that will leave me more alone than I already am. "I'm scared," I whisper, the same admission I made last night, but more urgent now, more desperate. "So am I," Thomas admits. "Scared that I'm too old to start over. Scared that I'll disappoint you, scared that this is all too good to be true." He lifts my hand to his lips and kisses my palm, a gesture so tender it nearly undoes me. But I'm more scared of walking away from you again. I can't do it twice, Maggie. I won't survive losing you twice. And suddenly, looking into his eyes, still that impossible blue despite everything time has taken from us, I know what my answer is going to be. Not because it's practical or sensible or what my children would want me to do, but because at 72, I finally learned the difference between being safe and being alive. "Yes," I say, the word barely more than a breath. "Yes?" Thomas's face transforms with hope and joy and something that looks suspiciously like relief. "Yes to Paris. Yes to taking risks. Yes to love, even if we're too old to know better." I squeeze his hands, marveling at how right this feels, how natural it is to choose hope over fear. Yes to whatever time we have left, whether it's 10 years or 10 months. I don't want to be safe anymore, Thomas. I want to be happy. He brings my hand to his lips again, but this time he doesn't let go. Are you sure? I think about my empty house, my careful routine, the way I've been sleepwalking through the years since Harold died. I think about the girl I used to be, the one who danced on fire escapes and believed in fairy tales and wasn't afraid to love with her whole heart. I'm sure, I say, and for the first time in decades, I mean it completely. 3 months later, I'm standing in my kitchen, our kitchen now, since Thomas moved in 6 weeks ago, making coffee for two and humming our song. The house that felt too big for one person is perfect for two people who've learned to appreciate quiet mornings and shared silences. Thomas reads the paper at the kitchen table while I cook, a routine that feels both new and eternal, as if we've been doing this for years instead of weeks. The integration of our lives has been surprisingly smooth, like two puzzle pieces that were always meant to fit together. He kept his apartment as a safety net. Just in case you come to your senses, he joked, though I could see the real worry behind the humor, but most of his belongings have found homes in my house. His books fill the empty shelves in Harold's old study. His clothes hang next to mine in the closet. His coffee mug sits beside mine in the dish rack. My children have been adjusting. Michael flew in from Portland last month, ostensibly to check on me, but really to inspect Thomas and make sure I wasn't being taken advantage of by some smooth-talking Romeo who preyed on lonely widows. The interrogation, disguised as a friendly dinner, lasted 3 hours and covered everything from Thomas's financial situation to his health history to his intentions toward their mother. He seems like a good man, Michael admitted grudgingly as he was leaving. But Mom, are you sure about this? Moving so fast, I mean, you barely know him. I've known him for 50 years, I replied, which was both completely true and entirely inadequate as an explanation. Sarah has been more accepting, perhaps because she understands the courage it takes to build a life with someone when society expects you to live alone. Jennifer, my baby, vacillates between excitement for my happiness and worry that I'm making a mistake that will leave me heartbroken. What if it doesn't work out? She asked during our last phone call. What if you're just remembering him through rose-colored glasses? What if the reality of living together ruins what you think you have? They're all valid concerns, the kind of practical questions that responsible adult children should ask when their 72-year-old mother makes dramatic life changes. But they don't understand what I've come to know in these past 3 months, that love at our age isn't about tomorrow or next year or growing old together. We're already old. Love now is about making the most of today, about choosing joy over caution, about deciding that happiness is worth the risk of heartbreak. Good morning, beautiful, Thomas says, looking up from his crossword puzzle as I set his coffee in front of him. The same greeting every morning for 6 weeks, and it still makes me smile. Good morning yourself. I kiss the top of his head, breathing in the scent of his shampoo, mixed with the cologne he's worn since the retirement dance. Sleep well? Better than I have in years. He catches my hand as I move past him, pulling me down for a proper kiss. You? I settle into the chair beside him, our morning routine as comfortable as if we've been doing it for decades. What's a 7-letter word for unexpected gift? Thomas studies the puzzle, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. Miracle, he says without hesitation. Perfect. I write it in, marveling at how the letters fit exactly, each one falling into place like everything else in our new life together. The passport photos we took last week are terrible. I look ancient, and Thomas appears to be squinting into bright sunlight. But they're official, which means Paris is no longer a fantasy, but an actual destination on our calendar. We leave in 6 weeks, our first adventure as What are we exactly? Boyfriend and girlfriend seems ridiculous at our age, but we're not married, not engaged, not anything with an official label. We're simply two people who love each other and are brave enough to act on that love. I was thinking, Thomas says, refilling his coffee cup from the pot I left on the table, maybe we should invite David and Lisa to dinner next week. Let them meet you properly instead of just hearing about the mysterious woman who's corrupted their father. I laugh, though I'm nervous about the prospect. Thomas' children have been polite during our brief phone conversations, but I can hear the reservation in their voices, the same concern my own children have expressed. We're upending the natural order of things, choosing romance when we should be settling into dignified decline. Are you sure they're ready for that? I ask. Probably not, Thomas grins, and I see the mischievous boy who used to convince me to sneak out of my aunt's house for midnight walks. But they'll adjust. David's already asking if you'll come to his daughter's graduation next month. The invitation touches me more than I expected. To be included in family celebrations, to be introduced as, what, Thomas' girlfriend? His companion? His love? The terminology doesn't matter as much as the acceptance it implies. I'd love to go, I say, meaning it. Good. Thomas reaches for my hand across the table, a gesture that's become as natural as breathing, because I want you there for everything, Maggie. Every graduation, every birthday, every ordinary Tuesday evening. I want you beside me for whatever time we have left. The words should terrify me, the presumption of a shared future, the assumption that what we have will last. Instead, they fill me with a peace I haven't felt since I was 22 and believed that love could conquer anything. Even when I'm grumpy in the morning, I tease. Even when I cry at commercials and leave my reading glasses in random places. Especially then. His thumb traces circles on the back of my hand, the same soothing gesture he's been making for 50 years. I love your grumpy mornings. I love that you cry at commercials because it means you still feel everything deeply. And I love hunting for your reading glasses because it gives me an excuse to follow you around the house. I lean across the table and kiss him, tasting coffee and contentment in the sweet possibility of more mornings like this one. Outside, spring is transforming the garden Harold and I planted together, tulips pushing through soil that's been waiting all winter for warmth and light. New growth from old roots, beauty from what seemed dead and dormant. When we break apart, Thomas is smiling at me with an expression that's part wonder, part gratitude, part pure joy. What was that for? For finding me again, I say, echoing his words from that first night, for remembering our song, for being brave enough to whistle back. Always, he promises, and I believe him. Later, after we finished breakfast and Thomas has completed his crossword and I've watered the plants that are beginning to bloom, we'll dance in the living room to music only we can hear. Later, we'll call the travel agent to finalize our Paris arrangements, giggling like conspirators planning the perfect crime. Later, we'll nap in the afternoon sunshine streaming through the bedroom windows, our bodies curved together like two question marks that have found their answer. But for now, we sit at the kitchen table sharing coffee and comfortable silence. Two people who've learned that love doesn't have an expiration date, that it's never too late to write a new chapter, that sometimes the most beautiful stories are the ones that begin with, "I thought I'd lost you forever, but then." And if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is.